Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Corey Thornton. I'm the managing editor for Market Intelligence at Open Minds. Today, as part of our weekly executive web forum series, Open Minds Senior Associate Paul Duck will discuss the fundamentals of marketing and strategy. Mr. Duck brings over 40 years of experience in leadership and management, focusing on managed care, health information technology, strategy, business development, market expansion, and customer experience. Before we get started, we have a couple of housekeeping reminders. Your audio will be muted during today's briefing, but we also rely on your questions and comments throughout the session. You can send your questions throughout the briefing to Mr. Duck, and he will answer them using the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. And with that, Paul Duck.
Corey, thank you so much. I appreciate that, and thank you for attending today's web briefing. And those of you who will be watching it after the fact, welcome, and hopefully find this engaging. So today we're going to talk about, essentially the topic is marketing planning, and it's really around the idea of sustainability during a post-disruption marketplace, which certainly we've been experiencing. And I think there's been a lot of learning that's gone on during, the past 6 months till really since the lockdown started, and a lot of the restrictions have been put in place. So today, we're going to really just talk about, we're going to kind of break this down into sections here. We're going to identify some of the trends, that I think are going on that we will talk about in, that really should be shaping your strategy. As I've said, probably if you've attended any of the web briefings previously, a lot of the work that we do at Open Minds, one of the things that we do for our clients is work with them on strategy. And we work on strategy pretty consistently with clients in terms of helping them drive a 5-year strategic plan. Was kind of the thing that was going on a couple of years ago. And then we saw the time frame shorten down to about 18 months. And now, of course, in this pandemic era, we're helping and working with clients that are in the 30, 60, 90-day kind of strategic planning. So a lot of it's changed, but I think there's a lot of strategy that needs to be put in place around these key trends that have gone on. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, the drivers for crisis marketing plan and the strategy that wraps around that. We're going to look at online marketing and its potential impacts on your brand, your whatever good name you've built and the reputation you've built, and why that's important. Excuse me. Then we're going to generate some ideas. We're going to talk about how your organization and your referral sources, your payers, employers, other partners and prospects, all of them, really how do you market to them, and what are kind of the key components of that? And as Corey has said, as we go along, please type your questions into the question box, and we'll pause between sections, if you will, and just see what kind of questions have come in, and it'll create a great dialogue because we want this to be pretty interactive. Okay, so let's continue on. So first, we're going to talk about, again, the key trends that are shaping the strategy. So I think there are, I kind of broke this down into 10 trends that really you need to be paying attention to, that really should be shaping your strategy. The first one is the one that really has been going on for quite some time now. And again, we see an acceleration of the idea of shifting and that transition from fee-for-service to value-based payment, and the other different types of alternative payment methods and some of the things that are impacting that. Certainly that's a big trend that should be impacting your strategy. The movement from, more traditional distributed services, again, thinking about where in a much more of an ambulatory environment where care is taking place, we see the payers pushing hard on that, and really looking at care that's going on in consumer homes or even workplaces. And some of that's facilitated by telehealth, and others are doing it with in-home care itself. Third, we have payers and purchasers. They desire to identify the total cost of care. The total cost of care is really what, again, looking holistically at healthcare spending is kind of the formula that the payers, and really looking at what the value is that's being driven out of that. And then looking at, again, who those purchasers are, and each one of the constituents in the purchaser, consumer, employer type really all look for greater convenience. So again, convenience has really been a big driver here in terms of the things and the innovations that we've seen come up and being driven hard in the last 12 months. The increasing use of analytics, again, as I've said so many times, provider organizations, which is a majority of our audience here, are sitting on a mountain of data that's being stored in electronic medical records, electronic health records for a number of years now. And really the secret is, how do you drive that information out of those databases, out of those repositories to really inform healthcare delivery? And this is really where kind of the magic needs to take place. And this is something that certainly should be part of your strategy in terms of really, really stepping up your game in terms of analytics and letting data be kind of the driver of decision making within your organization. Precision medicine's playing another huge role in terms of a significant trend that's really looking at customized care that is really driven around genotypes and other types of science that are really looking at improving care and driving down the cost of healthcare and avoiding unnecessary lab tests, for example. So there's a lot of going on around precision medicine. And again, looking at how clinical professionals can take much more ownership to address social determinants of health. More and more is being talked and written about social determinants of health. This is an area where I think the clinical professionals needing to take ownership of some of those barriers that really are preventing consumers from really kind of optimizing the outcomes that are important that we be delivering in the system itself. An integration of provider organizations and approaches, and the payers obviously want an integrated model because they're providing new incentives that really kind of make the idea of working in an integrated fashion more affordable and efficient, more cost effective, and more consumer focused. And again, the idea of integration, we know, is much better off. I mean, we can look at comorbidities by itself and realize that there's money to be saved, there's outcomes to be gained through the idea of integration and working much more cohesively as a healthcare delivery system and working as an ecosystem as opposed to working in silos. Number 9, the movement of care at the home for behavioral health, IDD, and the treatment of substance use disorder and child welfare. All of this, again, is moving care to the home, are all trends that we see strongly being enforced right now by payers. There's a lot of pilots that are going on right now, but again, a lot of treatment that we see that would traditionally take place in a brick and mortar environment, in long-term care facilities, all of that now moving to a home setting. And lastly, which I'm sure those of you, again, you've heard me talk about this in the past, the idea of Priceline, which is certainly the online tool that's been around for quite some time that is in the hospitality and travel industry. But the idea of it is really coming of age for healthcare. And I believe that you will see healthcare become much more retail oriented. And we'll talk about, some of the online pieces of that are really important for you to pay attention to, because again, it's going to take a pervasive and have a pervasive impact in terms of the way you market, the way you are seen by the community at large, much more so than how it's traditionally taken place over the last 50 years, for example. So again, let's talk about each one of these trends just briefly. And again, if you have questions on any of this, please go ahead and type that into the question box. The first trend that we talked about, and we talked about earlier, is that, again, that transition from fee-for-service to value-based payment or any other type of alternative payment model. The strategy that needs to be aligned with that is really, are you ready for value-based payment? Some of you, and again, most of you are dealing with a managed care organization of some type, but there are still areas of the country where there is no managed care. So again, part of this is being prepared for managed care, but more importantly, be now preparing for value-based payment and value-based contracting with payers, understanding what are the dynamics and things that you need to have in place that lie underneath that as far as the requirements that are very, very important to your organization in terms of being able to leverage a value-based payment environment and what you're really good at, and getting understanding of what you're good at and what some of the costs are for delivering those services at a much more granular level than you probably have ever thought about in the past. The movement, again, we talked in the second one, was the movement from more traditional to more distributed settings. And again, that would be the consumer home, workplaces, via telehealth. The obvious strategy here is the implementation of digital health, including telehealth solutions, and again, follow on by having the contracting and making sure that the contracting is in place to be able to get paid for those services, to be paid on par, which majority of healthcare delivery is paying for telehealth on par with the traditional in-person services. The third one we talked about was the payers and purchasers' desire to identify the total cost of care. The strategy here is a more robust data analysis, and again, having a much deeper understanding and looking at data more pragmatically and looking at what those costs are for the programs that you're either delivering today or thinking about developing, and again, addressing quality. Quality is a very, very important topic not to be forgotten, and that you understand what the quality metrics are that are important to payers and purchasers and employers, et cetera, all of the constituents. Very important that you understand that and be prepared to answer those questions in very specific ways. Next one was consumers, employers, purchasers need for greater convenience. And again, the idea here is to shift in the programs to a more of a retail or hospitality model, which again includes customer service. The idea of having a customer service oriented mindset, having a customer service oriented culture within your organization. It's a very different mindset, relative to this. I'll be actually doing a web briefing in October, around the idea of customer service, and we'll spend some time talking very specifically about some of the best practices and what organizations need to do to really kind of create that, raving fan culture for your organization. And then number 5, again, is looking at the increasing use of data analytics and, again, that greater EHR interoperability. So you're not just sitting in your silo with your EHR, but it's actually interoperating with other parts of the healthcare delivery system. And again, real-time analysis that informs clinical and administrative staff, of what just at the moment that they need that clinical information. Again, a lot of the tool sets that have been developed in the recent years really are now making this possible. When you think about how much data analysis would have to take place to really kind of drive that decision making, we really didn't have the compute power, maybe the operating system power, or the development tools to be able to create that. But those are really becoming much more available now for organizations to be able to develop around. So again, this should be part of your expectation in terms of the way you're receiving information, the way you're delivering it to the specific individual just at the moment they need it. The 6th one we talked about was precision medicine. And again, the strategy there is to really use innovations in biomedicine and genomics. And again, it's so likely to become the norm, in the short term. And again, I think this could be a huge differentiator for some organizations that really kind of take this as a key differentiator in how they look at treatment and how they can distinguish best practice and what some of the most effective treatments are for individuals with certain types of disorders, much more effectively than they could otherwise. And again, I think this is an area just where you see a lot of innovation happening in a very rapid pace. A good friend of mine and somebody who used to sit on one of the boards of the companies I ran, he's actually a futurist. He travels around the world talking to big organizations, like Boeing and Jeppesen and others, about the idea of what's happening from a trend standpoint. He has a lot of focus on the healthcare industry, and his belief is that the decade that we're in right now, between 2020 and 2030, there will be more innovation in this decade than there has been in the last 100 years combined. So again, when you think about all the things that have happened over the last 100 years in healthcare, in medicine, the idea that we could actually move faster and have more innovation happening in the next 10 years is pretty exciting. I think this is an area, again, the idea of precision medicine will play a key role in this in terms of treatment, driving down the cost of care, obviously improving outcomes, being able to do a lot more with a lot less. Clinical professionals taking ownership, again, of social determinants of health. The idea here and the strategy is that, training clinical staff on screening and processes in determining and solving some of these social determinants of health issues. Payers are very interested. They know that this will have a significant impact on the cost of care as well as the improvement of outcomes. So we know that quality will increase, as a result of dealing with the social determinants of health. So your organization needs to start tooling up, if it hasn't, around the idea of how it is that you're going to make this part of your treatment methodology within your organization. The next one is around the idea of integration of provider organizations and payers with new incentives, brand new incentives, and there are so many new ones that are being developed on a very regular basis, new pilots. And again, all of them are really around the idea of making healthcare and the costs associated with it more affordable, more efficient, and more consumer focused. So again, the integration idea is very, very important that be part of your strategy. And again, the strategy piece of this, I believe, is to build the relationships with complementary providers. And then once you have that in place and you have the data to back up what it is that you are expecting, again, the idea of inspect what you expect, that you actually leverage that in your contracting with payers, where everybody wins in that process. The next one was, again, this idea of moving to care at the home for behavioral health, IDD, and SUD and child welfare. The strategy here is to develop programs, policies, realize that, there's some complexity around this, but and then of course there's a whole marketing program and moving again around serving a subsection of your clients via an in-home model. I think you'll easily find that, an in-home model won't work for all the different types of disorders that you may treat or all of the different types of patients. But the reality is that this is an opportunity for you to really leverage that. Number 10 was that the idea of Priceline for healthcare. And again, it's much more likely a reality today, I think, than ever before. And again, we've moved down this path of really looking at consumer driven, where they're taking more control of their own care. So again, the strategy that you have to be thinking about here is, again, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, is monitoring online reputation and really kind of drive social media messaging and taking control of that messaging for your organization, as opposed to just being somebody who sits back and waits for consumer feedback. You want to be proactive in this, and we'll again talk about this. So before I move on, I'll just stop for a second. And Corey, we have any questions that have come in?
We do. We have our first question of the day from John. It's about market intelligence and identifying the trends. In a world where time is money, how much time should an organization put in up front to identify the trends that are pertinent to their organization?
Well, I guess it probably depends on what part of the delivery system your organization is in. So, in some ways, if you are in, I'll call it a more innovative practice where you're doing things that really are kind of first of a kind, there's probably more trend analysis and more demographic analysis you should be doing up front. But in terms of the types of things that you have been doing, the one thing that we encourage people to do is looking at what service lines have the potential for expansion, or even being complementary service lines to your existing base of business, as well as looking at market expansion. And I think these are the trends to stay kind of important in terms of, for an established provider, and looking at, what are the trends that you believe your organization can afford to leverage in the coming 3 to 6 months, where you can get on top of it and actually make that a key component of what it is that you're driving forward. But great question. All right, so let's continue on. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the drivers here. So and again, this is really quickly, just really want to talk very, very briefly about the 7 actions to emotionally connect with consumers. I have a little bit, here's a little diagram that kind of illustrates this, but if you break it down, those 7 drivers contain these elements: to minimize the risk by reducing physical interaction. So again, this is a big one in crisis, and we've all seen this, is how do we minimize that physical interaction, which actually really provides a level of comfort and care to the individual, your consumer, your patient. And so again, it shows your organization cares, and it shows that you're taking their interest into mind when offering types of services. I've seen organizations, for example, one organization, there were certain types of medications that required, with certain frequency of blood work. They were actually doing blood work outside of their facility, kind of almost in a drive-in model, just to facilitate that. So again, there's a lot of things that you can do, if you really, really get outside of the box and think from an innovative standpoint, that you can kind of create that reduction in physical interaction with patients, which again shows caring. The second one is actively contribute to safety by innovating the product portfolio. And again, there may be some things that you want to change within your own environments that really create an additional level of safety in looking at the kinds of things that you can implement, either with technology or with just process and procedure. The third is, a pragmatic help to customers in financial distress. And there's lots of things that you can do that aren't necessarily just about handing out money or forgiving debt. There are a lot of things that you can do just in terms of showing your caring, helping your consumers, showing them the way to, jobs and other types of financial resources. Certainly there have been a lot of grant funding, a lot of dollars that are available to individuals that know how to, access the system, if you will, whether either unemployment or other types of funding to really help them. So again, just being much more pragmatic about helping your customers in financial distress, again, shows a tremendous amount of caring, creates an enormous amount of loyalty to your organization. And again, fourth one, bring joy and support to the emotional needs of customers that feel trapped at home. And I think first one here is acknowledge the fact that a lot of people are trapped at home. A lot of people have not, that are used to interacting and being in a work environment, have not been outside of their home setting, if you will, for 6+ months now. So the reality is that I think, looking for ways of doing that. It may be, facilitating some type of, virtual daycare for a certain age group of people. There's lots and lots of different things people are innovating around. But again, this is an opportunity, I think, again, to show that level of caring to your consumers. Actively shift customers to online channels. And again, lots and lots of resources are available, but a lot of those resources are very unreliable. So take control of what it is that your consumers are accessing, and being that conduit to information for your consumers is really important in terms of establishing who you are, and again, that level of caring. Stay reachable and treat your customers with care and personal interactions, not always computer interactions. Make sure that you're providing that personal touch via telephone, via Zoom conference, whatever that may look like. But again, lots of opportunities here to do that personal connection. Demonstrate care for the community through company values. And again, most communities really value a lot of organizations tremendously that really offer the behavioral health, IDD, child welfare services that a lot of you deliver. And the focus here really is you have to demonstrate that care by outreaching and acknowledging people hurting during this time of crisis. Really should be demonstrated through what values you have, and is really put on display for your community. And I think that's a powerful, powerful way for you to really kind of either establish your brand, reestablish your brand, or really connect with the potential consumers within your communities through news stories. I mean, there's lots and lots of ways that you can do this. But again, you have to make sure that there's a publicity element to it so people know what it is that you're doing and how it is that you're doing it. So that was a quick one. Corey, I'm not sure if we had caught any questions there, but I'll just stop for a second and see if we had any.
Yes, Paul, we do. So that was a pretty important list, how to provide organization executives and make sure that after they invest in that list of 7 things, that after the crisis, it does not go away, or they don't slip into old modes of operations.
Right. Well, I think one thing is to make sure that, and this is actually a comment I hear fairly regularly from executives within the Open Minds customers, is that, how do I get the staff to really kind of cross this chasm of that going back to quote unquote the old norm? And I don't believe there will be the old norm. I think the old norm is now a thing of history. Certainly the advent of the acceleration in the usage of telehealth, which again, I know will throttle back through usage. We've seen some of those trends, but it's not going away. we're still going to see a massive increase in usage. We're going to see a lot of these things. So reinforcing this through either providing examples of what's being written about, in terms of journals, in terms of connecting the dots with the community, and really making sure that they also feel like they're a part of the activities that your organization is doing that show care to your community, I think are really important elements. But great question. So we're going to talk about brands for a second here. And this is a common one I hear all the time. And you probably have heard me talk about it before, but I'm not Coca-Cola, so what does a brand have to do with anything? Again, thinking you have to be a big company, a company like Coca-Cola or PepsiCo or Home Depot or whoever that may be, but a large kind of big brand, that's who branding matters. But branding should matter to every single business, every single organization. And what it is that you do with that brand identification, you have to take control of, because you want to be able to communicate to consumers who it is that you are and what you're about. The one big thing here is, again, brand perception is really kind of key. And this is what big corporations kind of pay attention to. And the reason why I think you need to pay attention to it as well, because again, brand loyalty and brand perception, is very, very relevant to healthcare, and it's very relevant to behavioral healthcare and all of the related services that we deal with on a regular basis. So, again, Google did this Think with Google study, and they asked the question, it was a true or false question. Other than a few exceptions, the majority of healthcare providers have the same capabilities and offer the same quality of service. In other words, just like everybody else. So there's not really much differentiation. 82% answer that question true. So think about that for a second. So, if I go to your website, my guess is that I'm going to find a lot of the same common things that are being talked about on other people's website, maybe even across the country, that deliver similar services that have the same claims. The reality is that the consumers, that's not resonating with them. The second question was on a scale of 1 to 5, how much effort would you say you put forth to find a healthcare provider that you would perceive to be better than the majority? And get this, 91% answered with a 4 or a 5. So essentially, people are using online tools to find a healthcare provider that meets their needs, or maybe meets their family's needs. Pay attention to these things, because again, either you take control of what it is that the consumers are finding, or they will just pass you by, because if you're not paying attention to it, you maybe skip through. So again, if you look at, and this is just a kind of a silly illustration here, but I think you'll get my point. But if you're doing the same thing as your competitors, the people across town, the people across the state, across the country, if you all look the same, act the same, have the same general kind of pricing, features and functions, etc., what differentiates you in any way, shape, or form? And how is that obvious to the consumer? That's what branding's about. That's how you differentiate. And again, you don't want to just be one of many with a different price tag or a different, look and feel, or say the same things on your website. You want to make sure that it's very different in a way that's meaningful to your organization. I think there's 6 things that I've seen that are really important that you pay attention to in terms of thinking about branding considerations. The first one is do your research. And again, before you decide to either overhaul your brand or you have to look into some form of research and looking at both quantitative and qualitative data to pinpoint a strategy. And some of that, maybe market study, it may be just looking at demographics. There's a lot of things that kind of go into that you have to pay attention to. Convenience, there's plenty of things. Second is the brand positioning. And again, I think the one adage here is that if you think you're a leader, think again. And again, most providers and if I go to most websites of anybody who's probably in this webinar today, there's a level at which it's either stated or implied that you claim to be a leader, or you claim to be cutting edge, or doing things around that no one else is thinking about. And again, the one thing here is I would really implore you is to not let clinicians completely guide the brand positioning, really simply because of the fact that you don't want to all be beating your chest saying that you're the greatest and that you are doing this. And again, part of this is that the idea of you want something, a unique statement about your organization, and that really comes through the unique selling proposition. We'll talk about that in a second, that you really need to have for your organization. Very different than a mission statement, but it has to be something that's meaningful to both staff and your prospective clients, consumers, patients. Third one is brand experience. And again, the key here is that consistency is very, very key in terms of driving success around brand and rebranding and brand recognition. And again, you have to really communicate your values, the values of what it is that you claim to your constituent consumers every day. You know, if we're passionate about one thing, we state it, our actions have to back that up. So again, if you claim to value consumers, but you keep them on hold for 10 minutes, you know, basically you're killing your brand. You're killing your statement. So it's important for you to kind of walk the talk, so to speak. By improving your organization's online experience through patient portals, online scheduling, all of this helps with, you know, bring that in line with the kind of reality that you're trying to create for your consumers. And again, I think the secret weapon, if you will, for a consumer experience that is memorable is really kind of the key attribute here. Is again, if they walk away from your facilities just wondering how different and what made it such a different experience than any other part of healthcare, that's a huge win and a way for you to differentiate yourself in a very profound and significant way to really allow you to gain a competitive advantage within your marketplace. The fourth one is a brand story. And again, part of this is, again, bringing your brand to life through storytelling. Again, the brand story isn't about your organization. So you're not going to tell a story to tell people how great you are. It's about how you relate to the patients you serve. And it's about what it is that you do for them and some of the specific things that, you know, that are impactful to individuals that people can identify with that your organization does. You know, and again, make the story about those you serve and make sure that you're using words like serve, is that you want them to know that the people within your organization are servants and that you do serve the community. All of these are very key attributes. Brand identity, and again, I call this thing all the pretty things. And part of this, again, is using, you know, the right tone and messaging and the right text, the right prose, to really look at, and also to complement photography that really acknowledges, you know, some of the things that your patients and consumers are going through, you know, and again, it's showing the caring and the outreach to individuals with both patients and caregivers. And you want something from a graphical standpoint with words that back it up, that resonate with them, that really they value. The sixth is brand activation. And again, this is walk the talk. And again, what's interesting is that this is one that is really often overlooked. A lot of people have no problem coming up with all the things that they're great at and telling the world about all the things that you do and how it is that you relate to your community, et cetera. But again, you know, that collaboration with internal stakeholders is a key attribute of really walking that talk. And again, you know, your internal stakeholders have to understand and support and believe and make it part of the culture, make it part of your DNA, so you can share it authentically. People should have, you know, a very consistent idea of what it is that your brand is about. And again, part of this is that you have to have brand ambassadors. You have to have a marketing campaign that really talks about this, both internally and externally, to really talk about how it is you're pushing the messaging out and how it is that you're differentiating yourselves to the community. Really, everybody needs to be involved because everyone's going to be touching a prospective consumer on any given day, not only at work, but also in their home and social life. I think the key questions that you should be asking about your online reputation, and we hinted at this a little earlier here, how online reputation is becoming even more important. And again, are you even aware of your organization's online reputation? You know, and why does that even matter? But are you even aware of what it is that people are saying online? Is that somebody's job or part of somebody's job to even look at that? You know, which websites do you have to manage and monitor? You know, are those websites being monitored and managed? You know, are you leveraging positive reviews, not only in a particular website where they appear, but maybe in other venues as well? Does that include social media? Are you publicizing some of the things people are saying about you very positively in social media and other vehicles? And what actions should you take around a bad review? What is it that, if somebody's unhappy for whatever the reasons may be, what do you do with that? And are you aware of your competition's reputation? Everybody has a reputation online. And are you aware of what that is and how that might impact you? These are key questions you should be asking yourself right now about about the way people are perceiving you. Because again, if we go back to Google Think, or Think Like Google, Think with Google, you see the impact that online has. So again, if you look at the perception as a reality here, who you are online is and also who you are, in person with people, I think is really important. So your reputation does lie in two places. So these are really kind of the 10 rules for managing your online reputation. And that first one is really, really key here. And again, it's really two places, online and in person, both have a huge impact. And they should mirror each other. In other words, if you say online you're great and other people say you're great, that in-person experience needs to match up with that in a very, very specific way. What's online can hurt you, but it also can help you. So people may say negative things, but you can also, if they say positive things, and if they're encouraged to say positive things, those are really, really important, and that's money in the bank in terms of marketing. And again, the third one here, I think we realize, but let me stress, the internet never forgets, never. Once something is posted online, there's services where you cannot bring that comment down without some type of legal recourse or some other means. But again, the internet never forgets. And realize once something is up that may be even inaccurate, it's very difficult to get that down without jumping through a lot of hoops. The fourth one is proactively work on your online presence at least once per week. And I kind of give you a simple formula here: search engine results, local directory listing, social media, and rating and review sites. There's so many new rating and review sites coming to be in the industry, just in terms of, it's not just Google or Facebook or other source of sites. There are many, many new ones coming up that are very specific to behavioral health, for example, that really look at ratings and rating scales that you need to be paying attention to. Number 5, claim and maintain your online directory listing. And again, there's lots and lots of ways that you can be listed in different types of directories. Find those that are most important. And again, make sure that you are claiming it, that you're managing that in a very specific way with some level of frequency. And again, I would say that reputation management has 2 speeds, both regular and urgent. There are some things that you want to act upon immediately, where others are just more kind of routine. You want to make sure that you're following up on comments, on reviews, on things that really are matter, on social media comments, etc. Always act both positive and negative comments or ratings. Hey, and again, a lot of people tend to only respond to positive comments or perhaps only negative comments, but you really want to be responding to all comments. That's how you build relationships with people. People want, especially people that are unhappy, want to be heard. And if you allow them to be heard by your organization by commenting right underneath them, that really is important to both the perception of the individuals that will in the future be reading that, to see the fact that your organization cared enough to respond in a very positive way. That really has a huge impact in terms of the way the world will perceive you. So if you look at, you can't control what people say, but you can actively tell your own story. And part of that is that, again, you're not going to be able to control everybody and what they say and all the reviews. And if you have a 1-star review on a particular site, that isn't the end of the world, but you also want to make sure that you are telling your story and you are showing concern and care for those that either have a great story or a not so great story. But again, part of this is that it's follow up and follow through that really becomes important, and what people are paying attention to. So we're going to take and break down just a little bit further each one of these. So again, your reputation lives in 2 places, online and in person. Again, pay attention to both daily. Don't let a day go by. You don't want something out there rolling around without some type of response, and you want to make sure that you're being responsive. a few things have a higher priority for healthcare providers. Concern for professional reputation that is hard earned and is constantly protected in daily work really is something that you want to make sure that you are in fact acting upon. Providers need no reminder that in-person part, but again, the online part, which is again out of sight, out of mind, is really as important and sometimes even more important than those in-person interactions. Make sure that you're not forgetting those online, part of who you are, and making sure that you're shoring that up. What's online could hurt you, but also can help you. And again, think of the internet as a digital home for digital word of mouth. And again, comments that go either way, can be seen as a form of endorsement, crowdsourcing, social proof, some type of seal of approval, if you will, sometimes. But again, consumer recommendations and testimonials can really have significant, very significant influence. And again, my earlier Google example is a clear illustration of that. But people's referral is probably the best gold you possibly can find in terms of finding providers. And often, a lot of us, that's exactly how we find new practitioners. Maybe we've moved to a new community, is that we're finding that out through word of mouth with friends and family, and maybe even online reviews. The internet never forgets. And again, when you think about that, user-generated comments that remain online and available, they can even be incorrect, inaccurate, and often undated. But again, these things are continuously available online. It's the reason why you have to keep your attention to your online reputation so that you are being proactive with the comments and being able to deal with individuals that really either have an axe to grind or, on the other hand, are very positive. You want to make sure that that positive behavior is reinforced just like negative is dealt with. Proactively work your online presence at least once per week. And, again, there's lots and lots of different ways you can do this. Search engine, directory results, social media, rating and review sites. And again, just here, make sure that you understand that there are so many sources, from the yellow pages or super pages to business listings, insurance provider lists, healthcare provider databases, Google Plus pages, community, area connected, lots and lots of different types of ways that you can connect. But again, make sure that those are accurate and they're kept up to date on a regular basis. Claim and maintain your online directory listing. And again, among the 4 information areas listed, that really you look at what deserves careful attention, as you're really looking at the challenge that many directory listings have. They include, a lot of organizations that you don't even know existed. So you want to make sure that you're familiar with your competitors at the same time. And again, many directories are based on old data. And the last thing you want is for your data not to be updated with something that is more meaningful and accurate given your today's circumstances. The 2 speeds are regular and urgent. Again, most consumers give physicians or healthcare practitioners a favorable rating and with online physician rating or other types of rating sites, but some online comments, both positive and negative, have timely importance. They recognize the difference between things that you just normally maintain and the things that you may maybe just thanking somebody for a kind review, but also you want to make sure that you're dealing with those hot potato issues and you tackle those first. Always act on both positive and negative comments. Pretty straightforward again here. You want to make sure you're responding to everything. It's building confidence in those that like you today, and it's also dealing with those that don't necessarily or have an axe to grind or have some issue that you want to resolve. And you want to make sure that they've put that out there in the open. You want to also put out in the open how it is that you've resolved it and make sure that other people see those types of activities as well. Neglect is a very slippery slope. And again, unfortunately, negative comments or reviews and outright complaints tend to come forward more easily than positive. And just so you know, from a ratio standpoint, it's about 3 negative to 5 positive notes versus 10 to 20 negative ones in general consumer studies. So again, very, very important that you realize is that in a pragmatic way, you don't want to neglect the idea of responding to these comments. And again, a policy of ignoring things tend to foster more negativity. And again, the reality is that if you're really demonstrating is that you don't care by not following up on some of these comments. And again, so if you want to look at this conversely, which is number 9, positive comments and testimonials thrive with encouragement. Again, ask people for them and make it easy for them to provide those positive reviews and feedback. Really important in terms of your being able to engage with your community and having them see you as a competent, very well spoken about provider organization within your community. 10, you can't control what people say, but you can actually tell your own story. And again, part of this is that you can control the quality of care and provide, and deliver a positive consumer experience. And again, the primary results to influence what the consumer finds online, really to contribute significantly towards that conversation that ultimately takes place online, either subconsciously or very consciously relative to what it is people are saying about you and how that's interpreted. Let's talk for a second about shareable content. So if you I looked at this study recently. UCLA psychologists suggested that people are regularly attuned and how things they're seeing will be useful and interesting, not just themselves, but to other people. So again, they want content that are going to be seen and making them look, perhaps more intelligent or a resource to other individuals. So overall, people want to share information with others, particularly when it's useful, again, where it can be helpful or beneficial to maybe people that they associate with. Amusing, could be entertainment, or it could be feel good, inspiring, material that touches the emotions with a high level of curiosity. All of these are the reasons why people share content and the things you want to take into account when you're developing content that make it shareable. And you've heard the term viral content, where it's shared by a couple of million people. This is essentially, if you look back and look at those posts, they follow some order of these 3 elements. And again, so I'm going to give you 10 quick ideas for sharing, for creating shareable content. And again, that could even be viral content. Specific purpose, cause, or defined need. And again, the millennial cohort relates to belief-driven ideas. Make it visually compelling using video or graphics or whatever the case may be. Infographics are another big one that's currently in use. Offer a specific takeaway or a reward or an incentive. All of these are what drive people to share content. People love lists with specific characteristics, how-to steps, essentially a cookbook, if you will, or a recipe. Give them direction. Provide an opinion or provoke an important discussion or debate. Sometimes, asking questions, creating a poll of some sort, starts that kind of dialogue. Surprising information and things that are usually or unexpected. You want to make sure that you're highlighting those, because again, those are what people will be very interested in. Number 7, timely topical matter or even provocative ideas that are in the news and are often shared. And again, we've had plenty of things. We're in an election year right now. There's plenty of things, but again, I would encourage you to stay around ideas that aren't necessarily controversial, but maybe thought-provoking as it relates directly to your organization. Really are those kind of things that you want to focus in on. When there is unique value or unusual authority for content that's not available anywhere else. So again, if you're able to develop content that really people will seek, that is, a one-off, it may be a whole new approach to something. Those are very, very key to creating this shareable content. Where practical, how-to or implementation value is strong or beneficial. And again, that how-to, that cookbook, that, oh, did you know this is how you do this? Really are kind of things that really are high degree of sharing kind of metaphor being used. So if you look at website performance, which is something you should be looking at, but you want to be able to look at, search engine optimization and being able to look at, the type of visitors and prospective visitors that are coming to your site. Why is it? What keywords and phrases are they looking? Are you using, pay-per-click advertising, and is that effective? Present a meaningful landing page, really important. First impressions really do matter. You want to make sure that it's rich in content without overwhelming the individuals. You don't want to be, we're the greatest, or we have, this individual practitioner and here's their CV. What you want to make this is about people, about your consumers. So again, I think the 3 rules for monitoring key performance indicators are, to define your website goals and look at it in very measurable terms, establish a meaningful comparison periods and terms. So if you're going to look at it month over month or year to date or whatever that looks like, those are important. And then monitor performance regularly. And again, looking at it, whether you look at it monthly, once per week, or even daily, all of those are ways I think that are important that you pay attention to it so that you're able to action it and be able to do something very useful very quickly. Key website metrics. Again, you have audience measurements, which is really, again, talking about unique visitors and what it is that they did within your site. Sources of visitors, in other words, where did they come from? How did you originally reach them? Was it word of mouth? Was it through an email? Was it through a conference? All of these are really important that you're tracking. Staying versus leaving. When visitors come to your website and almost immediately leave, essentially that's a bounce rate marker, as Google calls it. So you don't, you want to be monitoring bounce rate. So they only come in, see one page and leave. You want to make sure that you're understanding why it is they're going to maybe to one page versus another page versus another, and looking at ways as you change things and you're measuring it with new data. Conversions, again, looking at it could be really kind of one of the most important one is looking at the rate at which visitors become consumers or buyers. So in other words, not just an individual went to your website, looked for information, but did that person actually create some level of engagement? Those are the kind of things I think you should be measuring and thinking about. So Corey, after that longer section, I'm going to pause just for a second before we wrap up here. Any questions come in?
Yes, I believe you touched on this very briefly, but we have a question from Sharon that says, how can we, quote, tastefully market without hurting our reputation by seeming too aggressive?
That's a great question, by the way. Especially in the social media world, there are very specific kind of proven metrics around. You really want to provide kind of the advertising very infrequently, where what you want to do is to become an information resource, where you're providing information and people see you as an information provider, as an expert, as a go-to with the domain that you serve. So therefore, you're basically building your reputation around being smart, informed. All of these things are just implied as a result of seeing the things that may be interesting to people, and you're really kind of keeping people up to date. It's like you're almost providing a curated news service, if you will. And then slipping in advertising as where opportunities exist in a very small, measurable way, but not necessarily dominating what it is that you're posting to social media or other channels, but making sure that you're doing that in a way that's kind of in a subtle or even a stealthy way, where you're really presenting information and you're looking like the good the good servant that you are to your community and providing the information to individuals. Great question, though. So that's looking at the way you generate ideas to market your organizations through referral sources, payers, employers, and other potential partners and prospects. If you look at just the types of interactions, provider organizations need both business to business, which is basically a commercial transaction with another business, but you also need business to consumer, which is basically a commercial transaction with an individual. So again, you're utilizing both push and pull marketing in health and human services. So again, push marketing is getting the health plan contract, for example, or the attention of a referral source, where pull marketing is making the consumer and patient select your organization versus selecting a competitor of yours. It's real simple and straightforward, but these are important that you're being very purposeful about it. So just as a graphical illustration here is, push is health plan, contract with me, and the pull is, come to me, I'm the best. And again, obviously these are not very fine-tuned marketing messaging, but again, you get the idea here is what the difference is between push and pull marketing. This is a big one. So when we talk about marketing, we also have to talk about revenue, because revenue is obviously the reason why we market, right? We're looking to expand revenue, we're looking to expand margins. And again, part of this is that who in your organization is responsible? And this is a question that I love asking senior executives within organizations that we work with here. And it's amazing to hear the different type of interaction. Again, you'll hear the common ones where, again, our marketing group is, out, who is responsible for, adding additional revenue. But again, accountability for revenue and basically all of the components of it, have to come out in data as well. You have to measure it and you have to make it available. A customer-oriented organization at all levels, from the telephone person, the person who answers your telephone, the person who greets the front desk, the biller, the clinician themselves, obviously, all play a critical role. The follow-up. But again, the one comment I hear all too often is, that everybody's responsible for revenue. But ultimately, responsibility has to come down to an actual job description, if you will, and it has to actually have teeth, and it has to be something that's measurable. So, when you think about revenue and who's responsible for generating it, you should be able to come up with a finite number of individuals, and it should be very specific and laid out in data how it is that you're going to measure whether in fact they've been successful at delivering this, and what are some of the key performance indicators around it. Really important, because again, this will drive some of your marketing and some of your marketing messaging. We'll talk about unique selling proposition a little earlier, and some of you have seen me use this example in the past, but it's really worth just kind of quickly going through again. A unique selling proposition, or commonly referred to as a USP, refers to a unique benefit exhibited by an organization or service that enables it to stand out from its competitors. So what makes your organization different? And again, it's not in your mission statement. It is what makes people want to become buyers of your service. And again, I use the Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health as my example. Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health is one of the largest and most advanced behavioral health organizations in the country. We have a unique model that connects with the latest scientific and medical achievements, or to practical, effective interventions that in treatment of behavioral health. Really lays out what it is that they do, who it is that they do it for, and what makes them unique to other organizations. This is a great example of a unique selling proposition, and one that I encourage you to really think about developing for your organization if you don't already have it. And this is also something that, if you think about your staff, your associates that work within your organization, really they should be memorizing this. This is something that they should be able to recite, because it really should invoke some level of pride in terms of what it is that you do, and really turning more people into salespeople. So the characteristics of most websites, and again, this is one of my pet peeves, is that the websites that I see just are so all the same. So, again, they have lots and lots and lots of pages. I've seen websites with over 100 pages. There's most consumer information is text that's probably been lifted from another website or a journal. Very, very common to see within our industry. Most pages, intending to provide information, are entirely static, or they never get updated at all. So in other words, if I go back next month, the same information is going to be there. Again, you want to make sure that you're seen as an innovator, you're seen as somebody who's updating that. Claims about services, which we talked about a little earlier, they sound exactly like every other provider or organization that does the same thing. And I always use, the blah, 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 because that's what it sounds like. If it all sounds the same, no one's going to believe it. And then some sites even include extensive bios or CVs, especially for physicians or psychiatrists. They're talking about how important, all of the, every presentation or every white paper they've done, et cetera, et cetera. That is an important part of the website, and seen as an important part of websites. Some sites will even go into great detail about their services, almost going, to the formula of treatment and that the consumer can expect. Some sites post photos of the treatment and therapy rooms. Some sites reference white papers, treatment protocols. They get down into, the science behind treatment protocols. It's a lot of kind of in the trenches stuff. Some websites mirror the print brochures that their organization uses for marketing. All of these are characteristics of things that I see all too regularly within our industry. So now I want to talk about Coca-Cola. Use Coca-Cola. This I just actually screen captured these pages a couple of days ago from Coca-Cola's website. So let's look at what's the difference between what Coca-Cola does with their website and what most provider organizations do. So did Coca-Cola's website, does their site post their product formulas? Because a lot of provider organizations will tell you, here's how we do treatment and here are all the things that we do. Coca-Cola, they're not listing any formulas. As a matter of fact, it's in a vault someplace in Atlanta. It's a very, very top secret. They don't have biographies of their company's flavor scientists. In other words, they're not posting CVs of all of the important people that really are behind the brains behind what makes Coke so good. They don't include photos of bottling machines. That's not important that they're showing, people in the factory producing the product. And do they point to hundreds of white papers about carbonated beverages? That's the other one. Providing all of this overwhelming information is not at all how they market to individuals. And the answer is no, they don't do any of these things. And again, what they have is a user-focused marketing site. And again, they have big, bold photos depicting the Coke life, telling you where to go buy Coke or how to enjoy it or how to win Coke or how to share Coke or even how to market a Coke with your name on it. Again, everything they're doing is around selling Coca-Cola. That's what a website really should be, is really about what is it that will fascinate a consumer to become a customer or a prospective consumer to becoming a customer of your organization. And again, the translation here is, if your healthcare website, is it on brand? Is it your website selling your organization patient benefits? Again, the focus here is to turn web visits into phone calls or visits or into schedules. It can't be brochureware, and a website cannot be about creating new business, if you will. It has to be about creating new business. It has to be completely focused on really sales and sales-oriented ideas and things that will excite individuals to make them want to come back again and again. So I'm going to give you 5 free or low-cost tactics to leverage consumer satisfaction. And we're going to close after we come up with these freebies, because everybody loves freebies. And actually, we'll close with one kind of challenge for you. So if you, the first one is publish, and then republish. And again, create web pages that are devoted exclusively to testimonials. Testimonials are powerful. We saw that earlier when we talked about Google and what people think. Other people's opinions do matter. And again, those have to be important. They have to be monitored and they have to be worked. If you're unhappy, tell us about it. That's another big kind of notion. Unhappy or friendly customer service people will work, put a smile back on your face. Please reach us at, your service at, your company email. All of these can be easily integrated. And really, you want people to reach out. You want to view complaints as a gift. Happy, tell others. Happy, we're just happy that you're happy. If you're not sure how to express your newfound joy, here are a few suggestions. Tell your friends and family, share your experience, write a review or on Amazon or our site. Contact us via our website, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, etc. Number 4, the what do you think letter. A couple of weeks after starting a new email subscription, the editor of a publication sent a personalized email saying, well, what do you think? So the idea of sending a personalized email to an individual and looking for some type of feedback is really important in terms of creating an engagement. Automatically sends the message that you care and that you really do care if they're happy or unhappy and you want to hear about it. Number 5 is a consumer relations hotline. I think this is one that we often miss. Used to be part of every business that really had any size at all. But again, taking a hint from many consumer organizations, having a very responsive hotline, is really a powerful consumer relations tool. And again, you want this to be available at least during regular business hours. And if it can be even longer than that, all the better. And again, these are ways that you can defuse issues really rapidly, as opposed to letting them foster and letting somebody go out and writing a nasty review online or whatever the case may be. You want to create something that says, we're listening, please tell us, we want to respond to you. So I've included a whole bunch of other information here. I've included a whole section here, and you can go through this, afterward, and really look at how do you create an email subject line that can't be ignored. Because again, there's there's art around the idea of how it is that you can get people to open an email and actually pay attention to it. And again, there are specific elements to it, I think, that you have to pay attention to. So again, you have to look at what are the ways people use and access email. And of course, the smartphone is an important attribute of that. But again, take into account all of these things when you're developing. Video marketing is becoming even more popular, more important in terms of the way organizations are communicating with consumers or prospective consumers. And again, you can get way out of the box with video marketing and looking at ways of you can use animation and 360-degree kind of walkthroughs, if you will. There's an insider's only view or behind the scenes look at certain things. All of these are ideas about what you can do in terms of out of the box video marketing. And again, you have to make sure that you're learning lessons along the way. I've given you some lessons, 10 important lessons that you have to really, really pay attention to in terms of your marketing consideration. And finally, I'll close with this, some last words of advice, because again, I think what's important when I'm attending a webinar or seminar or whatever the case may be is, what should I do with this information I've gotten here? So, or what are the lessons that I've seen others kind of go through that, that can help us prevent really having to be able to experience the pain maybe some other organizations, or leverage some of the opportunities that they've experienced. The first one is, don't be lazy. Again, get your head out of the sand and realize that the online world is real. It can have a huge impact positively or negatively on your organization, and how you deal with it will really matter a lot. Preparation and the right marketing strategy are really, really the keys to success. Take control of your keys. Stop thinking sales and healthcare is wrong. And again, I'm giving you official permission today in sales to engage in sales in your organization. We talk about marketing just simply because it sounds better, but I want you to start thinking about sales as well as marketing. In other words, marketing really should be generating the interest, where sales is actually making them and turning them into a consumer of your organization. So make sure that you have those elements and get engaged in the idea of sales within your organization. Use data to inform your marketing strategies. What works, what doesn't work, what should we be spending money on, what shouldn't we be spending money on. Your online presence, reputation, and your ability to leverage all of your marketing capabilities basically will be part and parcel of dealing with this crisis, but also dealing with what goes on beyond the crisis and all the change that's going to happen within our industry in the next 10 years. Follow up with all consumers, no matter what they said, good, bad, or indifferent. Use video to send messaging. Again, this is a really important and very powerful marketing strategy that you have to use. It's one that's being used very regularly. You see so many apps being developed that utilize video. This is important that your organization is highly engaged in video marketing. And don't forget the in-person marketing opportunity with consumers. And again, make sure that your culture supports that raving fan concept. And again, please come back in October, and we'll be doing a web briefing just specifically on raving fan customer service. But it's such an important element to everything that you do. I believe it's underlined, and it could give you a tremendous competitive advantage over other organizations. So with that, Corey, do we have any final questions?
Hey, Paul, thank you. Yeah, this is, I think, ties into your last words of advice. What's the first question that a top executive should ask their executive team and marketing team at the start of developing a new marketing plan?
Well, again, assuming that you have specific growth objectives in place. So let's just say, I'll give you a couple examples. One would be is that we expect to grow revenue by 5% next year, or we expect to convert our revenue from being 70% dependent on Medicaid to 60% on Medicaid this time next year? And what are the marketing elements that we have to put in place? And then what data will we have to use besides the obvious looking at claims data to really measure this, and whether we're actually moving closer, and what tactics that we're using, and what tactics do we believe will work to be able to get us to any one of the marketing goals that you create. But there has to be a direct tie between the goal and the methodology you're going to use to get there, and a measurement that is very obvious and easy to look at on a regular basis, where everybody's on the same page, where you're able to look at the data and get an understanding and really have complete agreement on it as well. Any others?
That's great. That wraps us up. I want to thank you,
Perfect.
Paul, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to remind everybody that the slides in this recording will be available on the Open Minds site tomorrow, and that we'll be back next Thursday at 1 p.m. when we have another web briefing called Understanding What You Do Well in Building Your New Revenue Streams Through Repurposing Current Capabilities. And with that, thank you, Paul, and thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.